A few years ago, my phone would not stop buzzing. Not for an hour, for days. My wife has family scattered across the United States. Aunts, uncles, cousins she grew up praying next to. Phone call cousins, the kind of family that still family even when you only see them every few years. And that summer, the footage coming out of this country wasn't background noise for us. It wasn't a headline you scroll past. It was black grief and black rage on every screen. Some of the people in that footage could have been her family. Some of the fear behind that footage was her family's fear. I didn't have words for her. I want to be honest with you about that. Because it's not a small thing to admit. I'm the one who's supposed to have words. It's what I do it for a living. For my community. In the outreach work I do. I find words for hard things. That week, I didn't have any. So I did what I've always done when I run out of words. I called my pastor. The man I called my spiritual father. I've told you a lot of hard things on this podcast over 8 episodes. A bus incident when I first came to Canada, my DNA test results, a senior pastor who told me to go back to my country. But I've never told you this one. Not because it's the hardest, because it's the closest. Everything else happened to me. This one happened to my house. I asked him something simple. I asked him, do you think Black lives matter? He told me, all lives matter. I asked him again, not to argue with him. I actually wanted to hear him answer the question I'd ask, instead of the one he'd rather answer. So I asked him again, and he told me again, all lives matter. I'm going to come back to that phone call later on this episode, because it does not end there. Hold on to it for now. 3 words for you right now, before I go anywhere else. Palenque, Garifuna, Palmares. If none of those mean anything to you yet, good. That means this episode has something to give you. Stay with me. What does it cost you to ask your spiritual father the same question twice and get the same non-answer both times? Let's get specific before I get personal again. The scale first. According to the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC for short, roughly 134 million people across Latin America and the Caribbean self-identify as Afro-descendants. That's using the most recent round of national censuses, taken around 2020. 134 million people, about 21% of the entire region. 1 in 5. And even that number, the ECLAC will tell you, is conservative, because most countries in this region still don't count this the way they count everything else. You can find out how many people in El Salvador own a car. You cannot easily find out how many people in El Salvador have African ancestry. That gap isn't an accident. It's the argument of this whole episode, actually, compressed into one sentence. Some things get counted, and some things get made hard to count. I gave you a number back in episode 3 that belongs right next to this one. Roughly 5 million enslaved Africans were brought to Latin America during the transatlantic slave trade. About 40% of the entire trade. More Africans in bondage came to Latin America than came to the United States. Most people, when you ask them to picture the transatlantic slave trade, Picture the United States. That's not where most of it went. 1 in 5 people alive in this region today can trace a root to that number. My own children are part of that 1 in 5. My wife is Ethiopian-Eritrean. My children were born right here in Canada, Afro-Latino, whether that word has made it onto this country's paperwork yet or not. I told you in episode 2 about a DNA test. 40% Native American, 41% European. And I called it proof. Proof of El Indio, proof of Cuscatleco. I never told you what the rest of that pie chart was, because there wasn't much of it left to explain. And I never once stopped to ask why that felt normal to me. But it doesn't feel normal. This show has done 8 episodes on identity, language, names, colonial theology, and not once in those episodes did I say the word Afro-Latino out loud. That's not an accusation I'm making at anyone else. That's aimed straight at me, straight at my house. And it isn't only El Salvador that makes this number hard to find. Most of these regions' own governments still don't reliably track it. So the honest version of 1 in 5 isn't a clean statistic. It's an undercount of a number that was already conservative. In almost every country you could name, which tells you something on its own about which parts of a population get counted carefully and which parts get counted as an afterthought, if at all. For case studies, same root, 4 different ways a continent decided what to do with it. El Salvador first, because it's mine. In 1933, President Maximiliano Hernández Martínez signed a law called the Immigration Limitations Law. This is the same regime, the same year, responsible for La Matanza, the massacre of tens of thousands of indigenous and campesino Salvadorians. A story I haven't yet found the words to give its own episode, and maybe one day I will. That same government also wrote a law banning the entry of black people into El Salvador, along with Chinese immigrants, Arab immigrants, Romani immigrants, and that same law openly invited immigration from North Central Europe to whiten the population. That was the actual goal, stated almost plainly. That law stayed on the books until 1959, well after my mother and father were born. And here's what it did, and it did it quietly, which is exactly how erasure likes to work. El Salvador is one of the only countries in Central America with no significant Garifuna population, no significant English-speaking Afro-Antillean population, not because history skipped over us, not because no African-descended people were ever part of this land, but because a government made it illegal to arrive and work hard for decades to make it shameful to claim whatever African root was already there. I reclaimed the word Cuscatleco in episode 3. I said it like a homecoming, and I have not, until this sentence, said out loud that the third root of my own country's identity was legislated out of existence before my father and mother were even born. I don't know yet what that means for my family's fuller story. I know it means the story is bigger than the 2 roots I've been telling you about. Second, the Garifuna. Their origin starts with a shipwreck. In 1635, 2 Spanish slave ships wrecked near the island of St. Vincent. The Africans aboard, many of them Ibibio people from what's now Nigeria, were never recaptured, never enslaved on the island. They built lives on their own, and over generations, they intermarried with the Kalinago and the Arawak people already there. What came out of that is the people who are, at the same time, black and indigenous. Not one or the other, both, fully at once. In 1797, after resisting British colonization for years, more than 5,000 Garifuna were forced onto ships and deported from St. Vincent. Only about half of them, roughly 2,500 people, survived the crossing to the island of Roatan, of the coast of Honduras. From Roatan, the Garifuna spread along the Caribbean, in the coast of Central America, into Belize, into Guatemala, into Nicaragua. In 2001, UNESCO named Garifuna language, dance, and music a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. And this is not settled history. This year, 2026, Honduras stood up a new government office, the Secretariat of Indigenous and Afro-Hondurans People, and pushed Garifuna and other black Hondurans to check a single box on the census, Afro-Hondureño. Garifuna organizations sue their own government over that box. Their argument, folding them into one broad label, erases something specific: their own language, their own history, their own identity as a people who are black and indigenous at the exact same time, not one diluted into the other. That fight is happening right now while I'm recording this. Third, Colombia. Around 1599, roughly 30 enslaved people escaped into the forest near Cartagena, led by a man named Bencos Biojo. They built a settlement called San Basilio de Palenque. In 1691, the Spanish crown, worn down by decades of failing to recapture it, formally granted the town its freedom. That makes Palenque the first free African town anywhere in the Americas. Not the first attempt, the first one that actually won. UNESCO recognized Palenque's language and culture in 2005. About 10% of Colombia's population today identifies as black. Fourth, Brazil. Quilombo dos Palmares was an entire autonomous state built by escaped enslaved people that grew to tens of thousands of people spread across 11 settlements in the mountains of northeastern Brazil. It held off the Portuguese crown in open resistance for close to a century. Zumbi dos Palmares led its defense. He was offered peace more than once in exchange for surrender. He refused every time. He was killed on November 20th of 1695, a date Brazil now marks as its National Black Consciousness Day. Today, more than half of Brazil's population identifies as either preto, black, or pardo, mix. More than half. In Brazil, this root isn't a minority story anymore. It's the majority. Still fighting for the recognition its numbers should already guarantee it. 4 countries, 4 different outcomes. A law that erased a people who are black and indigenous at once, still fighting to be counted as both. A town that won its freedom outright. A nation where this root became the majority. Same root, wildly different harvest. I keep coming back to the fact that mine is the one that erased, not the one that resisted for a century in the mountains, not the one that sued the government this year over a census box. Mine is the one that wrought a law and waited. That's not a comfortable sentence to say out loud on this podcast. I'm saying it anyway, because the alternative is pretending my country's silence on this was an accident, and it wasn't. This is where the episode goes a little deeper, and it's about to turn personal again. So stay with me. Starting around the 15th century and accelerating hard through the transatlantic slave trade, European theologians reached back into the book of Genesis for a justification. Genesis chapter 9. Noah wakes up from too much wine, finds out his grandson Canaan saw him in a bad state, and curses Canaan to be a servant of servants. That's the actual text. Canaan, one specific grandson, curse for one specific incident. Over centuries, theologians slid that curse sideways, off Canaan, onto his father Ham, and then, with no textual basis at all, onto an entire continent, Africans. Broadly, as if the word appeared anywhere in the passage. It doesn't. Genesis 9 never mentions skin color. It never mentions Africa. It never mentions the transatlantic slave trade. Obviously, because it was written thousands of years before that trade existed. That distortion got preached as if it were settled doctrine for roughly 500 years. Martin Luther King Jr. called it exactly what it was: blasphemy, his word, against everything the Christian religion stands for. This wasn't only a United States problem or an English language problem. Spanish and Portuguese colonial theologians used the same distortion from the same century to bless the same trade. The trade that brought Palenque's ancestors to Cartagena in chains, that brought the enslaved people of Palmares to Brazil, that brought, by some estimates, more enslaved Africans to Latin America than anywhere else in the hemisphere. The theology and the ships moved together. That's worth saying plainly, because it's easy to file this under someone else's history. But here's the thing about a bad reading of Scripture. The rest of the Scripture doesn't go quiet just because one passage got hijacked. Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 5. I am black and beautiful. Not I am black but beautiful, like the color is a flaw love has to overcome. Black and beautiful in the same breath. No contradiction implied at all. The color is named. The color is loved. I need to stay on that verse just a moment longer because for most of you listening who have Spanish as your first language, it has never actually said what I just said. The Hebrew word is shekorah. It's the ordinary, plain word for black. The same root used for black tents, black hair, black night. It isn't an ambiguous word. It isn't shorthand for something softer. It means black. Open almost any Spanish Bible, the Reina Valera, from the 1602 version, all the way through 1960, most of us grew up hearing, and the verse doesn't say negra soy. It says morena soy. Dark skin, tan. A different word, on purpose, 400 years running. It's not that Spanish doesn't have the word. A more recent, more literal translation, the Biblia Textual, renders that same line exactly what the Hebrew actually says. Soy negra pero codiciable. Black am I, but desirable. The option was always sitting right there. For 4 centuries, most of us simply wearing-handed it. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I know exactly why one word got chosen over the other 4 centuries ago by translators I never met, but I can tell you the effect because I grew up on the receiving end of it. Generations of Spanish-speaking Christians have recited a verse about a black woman calling herself beautiful without ever once having to picture a black woman while they said it. Numbers chapter 12, Moses marries a Cushite woman, an African woman. His own sister Miriam objects to the marriage. God's response is not to rebuke Moses. God strikes Miriam with leprosy for objecting. God defends the marriage. Neither Miriam nor a 500-year theological tradition ever wanted defended. Amos 9:7. Are you not like the Cushites to me, O people of Israel. God, speaking to God's own chosen people, deliberately levels their chosen status against a black African nation on purpose in the same verse, as if to make sure nobody could later build a hierarchy out of it. In Acts chapter 8, the Ethiopian eunuch, one of the earliest converts in the entire book of Acts, not a footnote, not an afterthought, welcome, baptized, sent on his way rejoicing, with no qualifying condition attached to any of it. That's the same Ethiopian church tradition my own wife carries in her own body today, a story I'm going to tell you more fully in a future episode. Tonight, I just want you to notice Acts 8 didn't wait for anyone's permission to treat that man's full humanity as settled. So the curse of Ham wasn't the last theological trick built to make sure erasure feel righteous. There's a newer one. It sounds kinder. It even sounds humble. I don't see color. I want to slow down on that sentence because I've heard it more than once, and I need you to hear what it's actually doing. It sounds like the opposite of racism. It sounds enlightening. What it actually does is erase the specific person standing in front of you, their history, their inheritance, their wounds, everything that makes them exactly who they are, and replace them with a version of them that costs the speaker nothing to love. Scripture never once asks you to stop seeing someone in order to love them. I am black and beautiful is not a colorblind sentence. It's a color naming sentence. Numbers 12 doesn't defend a marriage by pretending Moses' wife wasn't Cushite. He defends the marriage while naming exactly what she was. This isn't a 500-year-old story about people long dead. It's this year's story, and it's closer than a census form. Latin American scholarship actually has a name for what I've been describing in this episode. La tercera raíz, the third root. Standing alongside the indigenous root and the European root, Mexican researchers built an entire academic project around that name, going back decades. The name exists. The recognition in daily life, in national identity, in who gets asked to check which box, that recognition still lags a long way behind the name. I told you back in episode 3 about the myth of mestizaje, the story that everyone in this region simply blended into one raza cósmica, one cosmic race, and the difference stopped mattering. I told you that myth diluted the indigenous root while claiming to honor it. It did the same thing, more completely, to the African root. Mixing dissolved the physical markers, and with them, dissolved a lot of the claim identity too. The Honduras census fight I told you about last segment isn't history. That's this year. Being counted and being allowed to define the category you get counted under is still a fight actual people are having right now in 2026. And sometimes, it isn't a census form at all. Sometimes, it's a phone call to your own pastor. That's where I need to take you next. I told you at the start of this episode about a phone call. Let me finish it. My wife has family across the United States, and that summer, she was afraid for them. I didn't have words. I called my pastor, the man I called my spiritual father, the person I trusted to help me find words when I ran out of my own. I asked him if he thought Black Lives Matter. He told me all lives matter. I asked him again, not to argue, to actually hear him answer the question I'd ask. He told me again, all lives matter. Then he told me something else. I hadn't asked him this part. He offered it. He said he didn't see my wife as a black woman. He said he saw no color. I want you to sit with that sentence for a second because I had to. That sentence came from the man I trusted to shepherd my family. My spiritual father. A title I don't use lightly. And it was the same sentence, almost word for word, that I had already heard more than once from people who weren't hiding what they believed about my wife, about my kids, about people who looked like them. We stopped going to church after that. I want to tell you honestly what that cost, because it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. And the quiet was its own kind of wound. Word travels slow in a church that size. Very few people called to ask where we'd gone. Some did. My pastor never called. It took years before I walked back through those doors. I do outreach across the Lower Mainland with people the rest of the system has a habit of not quite seeing. I have watched what happens to a person when the people responsible for their care decide quietly that they don't need to be fully seen to be helped. It never looks like cruelty. It looks like I don't see color. It looks like a form that doesn't have a box for what someone actually is. I didn't need a training module to teach me what that does to a person. I'd already felt it. On the other end of a phone call from my own pastor. I need to tell you why I went back, because it isn't the reason you might expect. I didn't go back because the church changed. I didn't go back because anyone ever apologized or called or even asked. I went back because my children grew up in that building. Sunday school, vacation Bible school. Most of their whole childhood memory of God happened inside those walls. I couldn't hand my children a faith with a silent asterisk on it. Live quietly, let the silence be the last word they ever heard about what happened to their family there. I understand something now that took me a long time to be able to say out loud. My presence in that building is its own kind of reminder. Not a comfortable one. A reminder of what's never said out loud there. Of the ugly, daily face of colorism and discrimination that Black lives carry. Every day, in most of that room, and in ways most of that room will never have to think about. My wife carries that by identity. My children carry it by blood. And when I walk back into that sanctuary, some part of what I'm carrying with me is the fact that nobody in that building ever had to sit with the question I asked twice and never got answered. But here's the part of the story that I actually want you to leave with. One day I was trying to explain to my children why we had almost left that church for good. I was still finding my words. I think I'm always going to be finding my words for this one. And before I could finish explaining it, one of them said something I did not expect. They said, "We have to be inside to fix it." I have spent years, and a pastor's silence, working my way toward an idea my own children already understood without anyone teaching it to them. You don't fix a room by leaving it empty. You don't fix a silence by adding your own silence on top of it. Somebody has to stay and ask the question again, even when the answer doesn't change, even when it takes years, even when the person who should have called never does. Let me answer the question I opened this episode with. What does it cost to ask your spiritual father the same two-word question twice and get the same non-answer both times? It costs you years. It costs you a church for a while. It costs you the version of your faith that assumed the people meant to shepherd you would show up when it mattered most. But I want to be careful here, because this isn't a story about losing faith. It's a story about what faith actually requires once the easy parts stop being enough. 1 in 5 people in this region carry the root this episode is named for. My own children are 2 of them. 3, if you count the wife I get to come home to every night, whose faith is older than any empire that ever tried to justify enslaving people who look like her. This show has spent 8 episodes reclaiming language, reclaiming names, reclaiming an indigenous root I found in a DNA test and I called it home. It took me 9 episodes to say the word sitting at my own dinner table every single night. Negra y hermosa. Así lo dice el hebreo. Así debió sonar siempre. En cada Biblia, en cada iglesia, en cada casa. Le pregunté 2 veces a mi pastor si él creía que las vidas negras importan. 2 veces me dijo que todas las vidas importan. Y me dijo, sin que yo se lo pidiera, que no veía a mi esposa como una mujer negra, que no veía color. Mis propios hijos me enseñaron lo que mi pastor nunca pudo. No se arregla un cuarto abandonándolo. Hay que quedarse adentro para arreglarlo. What does it mean to follow Jesus right now? When the man who's supposed to shepherd you tells you twice that whether your wife's life matters is a question he won't actually answer. What does it mean to be Latin American today? When your own children are Afro-Latino, born right here, and the word doesn't even exist yet on most of this country's paperwork. My children told me when my pastor never could. We have to be inside to fix it. Hasta la próxima.